I then settled on this vibe with the dark blue and gold hardware. I think in a guitar like this, it makes sense. It just makes the whole thing fancier rather than in a guitar that's all beat up like the Telly, with pearloid details here and there, and the turtle shell fancy 3-ply binding. I'm a big fan of Frank Brothers guitars, and they do a lot of these crazy bindings, and they actually switched my mind kind of midway throughout the process. I ended up telling Rui that I no longer wanted to do my original idea and wanted to actually move to something like this, which originally I wanted 5-ply binding, but with the arm contour and the top here, it just didn't really turn out feasible. I actually gave this guitar a little bit of a more complicated building process because this is not a solid body, this is a chambered semi-hollow thin line-ish body, so this is actually a top that gets glued in. I wanted to have an arm contour, which I didn't really think about, and that's where people like Rui, who are very experienced in the building part of it, can actually step in and be like, well, if you want to have binding, listen, binding can bend one way to form the body of the guitar, but it can't really bend one way and then bend the other way to form the arm contour as well. The material just doesn't work like that. But because Rui is a legend, was actually able to give me a very slight arm contour. The F-hole also has a revealed binding to add a little bit of extra spice. I have a thin line Strat and have tried a bunch of ES335s over the years, and while I haven't tried any thin line Tellys, I kind of feel like having a semi-hollow body, even if it's more like a thin line body construction type, fits more with the vibes of what I'm going for. And if we're just playing acoustically, it just has a more satisfying ring to it. With that being said, let's finally talk specs. I'll actually leave a list of features and specs on the screen here, but even then, there's so many special things about this guitar. Something that isn't on the spec list, and I can't really say that I care about, but I kind of like to know when I'm watching other YouTubers reviewing guitars or demoing guitars, is the weight. I don't think I've ever weighed any of my guitars. I kind of just go according to like, do they feel heavy or do they feel light? And it's not for any particular reason. Like, I kind of feel like I should probably weigh my guitars at some point, but I went and weighed this one specifically for this video, and it comes out at 4.08 kilograms, which is approximately 9 pounds if you gotta be like that. And some of you guys are going to say that it's a heavy guitar, but we're talking about a guitar with like 4 bulky ass knobs, pretty involved electronics, plus springs on the back, plus a bunch of plastic when it comes to the binding, pickguard, and even the wood covers. And those 9 pounds are already including the foam that I put on the back for the springs, the fret wrap on the headstock, the tremolo arm. I also have a small Dario tuner on the back of the headstock and a little hippo trinket, and all of those are going to add to the weight of it. And let's not forget that we're talking a 7-string guitar, so we gotta accommodate the whole guitar with multiple measurings by a significant margin in all dimensions. And considering that the guitar has a one-piece alder body, a very fancy and beautiful alder piece body, you can't really win every single lottery. But not gonna lie, my blue Strat, which is just a Strat, it has all those contours, belly cuts, and arm contours, actually feels just as heavy, if not heavier than this guitar. I've never weighed that one, like I mentioned before. But just vibes-wise, I played with that Strat for years, and this one doesn't really have the vibe of being as heavy. So yeah, while I wouldn't mind a lighter body, I don't really care too much. I went for Dunlop strap locks because honestly they always kind of work. I've only had one faulty one, and it was actually in this base over here. It wasn't even at the button, it was at the strap part. But I've had that base for so many years that the strap bit was kind of rusted and corroded, so I've never really had any bad experiences with it. And because they're dual function, I can still use them as regular strap buttons if something wrong happens with the strap bit. If we look at the back of it, I didn't really care much about the wood that we were going to be making the guitar of. I'd be fine with mahogany or alder or even ash, but Rui, being the actual builder between the two of us, actually told me like, if you want a guitar that's more like in this genre, maybe you'd rather this type of wood. If you want a guitar that's more in that genre, maybe you'd rather this type of wood. I'm not going to be telling you that it's going to make the biggest amount of difference, or that it is going to sound bad if you use any other woods, but when it comes to the ratio / combination of weight plus density plus tone or vibes, maybe you should go with one of these. And I obviously respected that, and that's what I wanted and asked for him in the first place. So we went for an alder body, and while this is a one-piece alder body, we were originally just going for a 2-piece like most guitars, but when we were looking at it and we sprayed it with a little bit of water to see how the wood grain would pop with the finish, the 2 bits, while dry, was pretty much the same. When wet and finished was kind of too different for my liking, so Rui took me back to his wood library, and when we started to compare bits of wood here and there, none of them were really giving me the vibes. And so because Rui is just that sort of guy that really wants to make sure that you have the guitar that you're very much passionate about, he ended up going for a more premium feature, which in my case he didn't really charge me for because he's the boss, by going for a 1-piece alder body. Having a belly cut was also very important for me. To be honest, my Telly has that as well, even if it doesn't have the arm contour. And by the way, don't really question the different springs because I've just been experimenting with it. It's not really a science or tone thing. I'm not really the biggest tremolo user when it comes to the more leadish type of playing. I've gotten used to doing it with just my fingers over the years and doing some pre-bends and awkward bends here and there. The same thing with dive bombs. There's a lot of things you can do behind the nut and even by pulling and pushing forward the neck out of the neck cavity. But I kind of gotten used to it over the years, especially for more chordal type of playing. There aren't a lot of 7-string tremolos, and I was in between getting a hip shot or a goto. And while the goto one looked more traditional, because this guitar is kind of traditional already, I kind of thought it would be cool of having it be a blend, not only in specs, but vibes of modern and traditional. And sometimes some of these pieces of hardware, because they are kind of fancy and not really that popular, like a 7-string tremolo, you know? It's not your average guitar player that's going to buy it, so it's going to be a bit expensive. And if you make it gold, it's going to be even more expensive. Like in this case, I think it was like $100 to $150 more just because it was gold. And it was already pretty expensive in the first place because of the nature of the tremolo that it is. But I kind of don't regret getting it because it's just so stable and so smooth. A bunch of guitars with rosewood necks, and I just love the feel, and if you believe in tone wood, that as well. I wanted to copy the neck specs of this guitar, not only when it came to the overall shape, but also the depth and the wideness of it, especially at the nut, because I've tried other 7-string guitars over the years, where the string spacing here at the nut is slightly narrower, so that your neck doesn't get super wide, but I don't really have like the smallest fingers, so having a narrow string spacing isn't really something that I'm very much into. The tally has 22 frets, but I kind of wanted to go with 24. The neck joint back here is super smooth, not sharp or with harsh corners, and if I press my hand all the way in to a point where I just can't go any deeper or be comfortable with it, I can still very easily reach the 24th fret over here. The specific dimensions of the frets, like, I don't know, whatever's on my telly. But then I thought about it, and my telly has old frets which have been filed and re-leveled over the years, so they're not quite the height that they should be. I also don't really like these extra jumbo frets because they're too wide and too tall for me. I never really thought stainless steel frets were too different over the years, but when I've tried Rui's guitars, it just felt way smoother and way fresher than any other frets I've tried over the years. I've never felt stainless steel frets as shiny and smooth as his were. So I knew I wanted to go with stainless steel. To be fair, these frets are actually kind of getting low, so in the day I changed them, they will actually be changed out for stainless steel. Lumen inlay side dots. The fret inlays were inspired by these other fret inlays that Rui kind of does for his guitars, but made a little bit more offset and smaller. Originally I had this idea, which is pretty close to what we did here, but a little bit more ornate and a little bit more fancy, which just turned out to be very labor intensive and would raise up the price significantly. So I just went with these that I think just turned out really cool. With the perloid, it kind of matches the one in the knobs and in the tuner tips pretty well. I kind of just wanted to escape the dots. In fact, that's kind of like the thing that I most hate about that guitar is the boring dots, but I didn't really want anything super show-offish like blocks or something like that. I knew I wanted a reverse headstock, no 3-on-3, or in this case 3+4 or whatever it would be. I much rather have them all in line for the most part, and having a reverse headstock I just think is kind of cool. The more modern open gear locking tuners, also by Hipshot, which were clearly John Mayer inspired. I also wanted to keep the scale length of the guitar at 25.5 because again I wanted the guitar to have its feel and vibes as close to that one as possible. And while most metal guitars actually have the scale length be longer, to keep that tight tension when it came to the lower tunings at like 26.5 inches or even more, because I just wanted to have a low B string and occasionally an A string, and I usually use 9.5s on my guitar. I actually feel like a 59 or even 60 gauge string actually fits that low B pretty well, and those strings aren't really that massive, so I feel like the 25.5 isn't really an issue. Because again, I am using this guitar as a tool for a genre that is a little bit different than most 7-string users. I'm not trying to do the low metally chugs, even though in my opinion it does them very well. Thank you for watching this video. This is just a section of the bigger video of the review/demo of my custom Rui Silva guitar. If you'd like to learn more about it, please click the full video and consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, follow, and stay tuned for more.